The very first time you open Blender, you'll see this window prompting you to set up your basic input preferences. If you're already used to another 3D program, especially Maya, this will save you a lot of time. Set your shortcuts to industry compatible. Now your 3D navigation and keyboard shortcuts are the same as in Maya. You're welcome. If you're new to 3D, or if you're a pro who wants to learn how to use Blender the right way, leave your shortcuts on Blender, set Select With to Right, and Spacebar to search. Once you click Next, your settings are saved and you'll never see this window again, but I'll go over why I prefer these settings and how to change them after the fact in another video. This is what you'll see when you start Blender from now on. On the left are some templates for different types of projects. Under that, you can open an existing file or recover your previous session if your computer crashed. On the right, there's a bunch of stuff you can ignore. Most of the time, you can ignore this whole window and close it by clicking outside of it or on the picture. So now you're finally looking at the default Blender workspace and you're probably thinking, what am I looking at? Well, what you're looking at is a program called Blender. Okay, so what you're actually looking at are 4 distinct panels. I'll cover each of them in their own video, but for now, let's just go over the basics. This is the 3D viewport, and it's where you'll do 90% of your work. This is where you interact with your scene and everything in it. If you set your shortcuts to industry compatible, then you already know how to navigate the viewport, don't you?
Oh, good for you!
Otherwise, you navigate the viewport like this. You'll need a mouse with a scroll wheel. Use the scroll wheel to zoom in and out. Hold it down and drag to orbit around the scene. Hold down the Shift key at the same time to move left and right. There you go. Now you can navigate the viewport.
Oh, good for you!
Over here is the outliner. It outlines and organizes everything in your scene using folders called collections. You can also use filters to make individual objects or entire collections invisible in the viewport. Below that is the Properties panel. This is where you change the properties of your scene and everything in it, from render settings to materials to modifiers, which are an extremely powerful set of tools that deserve their own video. Finally, on the bottom, we have the timeline where you control the animation. If you have experience with any video or animation software, this should be familiar to you, but even if you don't, you're on YouTube right now, so you already know the basics like play, pause, reverse, and the playhead that tells you what frame you're on. Navigating the timeline is just like the viewport. You zoom with the scroll wheel and hold it down to move. Unless you set your shortcuts to industry compatible, in which case you have to hold the Alt key and drag with the left button like an animal. You can also use the scroll bar to zoom into the start or end of the timeline. And there you go. Now you know what you're looking at. If you haven't already, go to blender.org, download the latest version, open it up, and try to get a feel for navigating the viewport and timeline. In the next video, I'll show you how to actually do stuff.